Hey guys, so we're going to go over days 5 and 6, lecture for Principles of Baking. Um, in this lecture, we're going to cover laminated doughs and pâte à choux and pastry cream and pie dough. Okay, so with laminated doughs, that's where I want to get you started. We use that machine over there on that table, the sheeter, a lot for making laminated doughs because we have to get even rolls and equal folds and square corners when we're making it. And what we're doing when we're making a laminated dough is we're actually taking a butter dough and we're locking it in with a water dough. So the butter dough's French name is a barrage, and then the water dough is a de trempe. Okay, so we're locking the butter into the water dough. All right, and when we're doing this for puff pastry, there is no yeast in the dough. It's just going to be layers upon layers upon layers of butter and dough. And we do this through a series of rolls and folds. So first off, we have the lock-in. We're going to lock the butter into the de trempe, and then we're going to roll it out and give it a three-fold, and then we're going to turn it 90 degrees, and we're going to chill it for 30 minutes, and then we take it back out, and we do another roll and fold, and you go through this series of rolls and folds, and you end up having layers of butter and layers of dough, and it gets into the hundreds of layers of butter and dough. Okay, and that, when we're doing it for puff pastry, is the only lamination that's going to be happening. That's the only way that it's going to leaven, is through the lamination, rather. When we're doing it for Danish and croissant dough, we're having that lamination, but we're not putting as many layers into it as we do with the puff pastry. Puff pastry is the most highly laminated of all the doughs. But we are still putting hundreds of layers of butter and dough together. The difference, though, with croissant and Danish as opposed to puff pastry is that they have yeast in them. So their de trempe also has yeast, and that yeast still is active, it's still doing its job, it still helps leaven. So Danish and croissant are leavened twice. They're leavened through steam, through the lamination process, and then they're leavened again with the yeast. With puff pastry, all you got is the steam that's coming from that butter when it's released through the lamination and it's baked off. Okay, so that's lamination in a nice summary. Then we have pâte à choux. Okay, it looks like pâte à choux if you were to read it, but it's pronounced pâte à choux. Ooh, my shoe is dirty. Okay, so pâte à choux. It is a paste that you make first in a pot, then you stick it into a mixing bowl, and then you add eggs to it, and then you pipe it out, and you can pipe it into eclairs, or you can pipe it into cream puffs, or whatever, okay? And because this paste is used for eclairs and cream puffs, sometimes it's known as eclair paste, and sometimes it's known as cream puff dough. But it's all pâte à choux, and it's all going to be leavening the same way because it's all the same thing. And it's through the process of cooking it in a pot and allowing the starches to pre-gelatinize and the proteins to do their job when they go in the oven that we have this pocket that is able to form. So after the paste is made in the pot, you dump that paste into the mixing bowl and you let it work, and all the steam comes out of the paste, and you add in your eggs, and you may or may not need all of the eggs that are available in the recipe, and you pipe it out and you stick it in an oven at about 400 degrees initially, and when that happens, the steam inside of the eggs pushes this air pocket, and then the proteins in the eggs coagulate, and those pre-gelatinized starches gelatinized the rest of the way, and caramelization happens on the outer surface. And then when they're all nice and caramelized, nicely golden brown, we pull them from the oven, and there's this light little puff that's just waiting to be filled with something. And that's when enter the pastry cream. We use pastry cream to fill the cream puffs to make eclairs, or rather the eclairs. And then with cream puffs, we can fill with pastry cream as well. Anything really. They are good for savory applications too. So they've got a lot of versatility there. And then the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is pie dough. Now we've got savory pie dough, we've got flaky pie dough, we've got mealy pie dough. When you hear the term pâte sucrée, I want you to know that that is what we use for tarts. Most of the time, it is made through a creamy method. So it is not your typical pie dough method that we use in the United States. And then you have your pâte brisée, and that pâte brisée is our savory dough. Again, it's going through a different method than the pie dough that we use in the United States. But I want you to learn those terms and to become familiar with them. Okay? And again, this is on your PowerPoint, so always feel free to go in and check your PowerPoint for fun images and stuff like that. So I'm going to run through it a little bit. I'll show you kind of what I was talking about from one computer to another. We have some images on our PowerPoint slides of croissants in Danish. This is Danish, and these are croissants. And you can see better when you actually access it, those layers that we've made through the lamination process. Okay, and then here's a better picture of those layers that we make through the lamination process. Okay, so we get a different flavor profile from Danish and croissant. You also get a different mouthfeel because they have the yeast in them, where puff pastry does not. But they all have that really fun flakiness that comes from the lamination of the dough. Okay, and then you'll see also on your PowerPoint slides, they'll show you what the lock-in looks like and what the lamination looks like. And that puff pastry dough, when you look at it on your computer, you can actually see the layers of dough and butter all kind of combined there in a really nice way. Okay, so we also need to make sure, we're always talking about even rolls, even folds, and square corners. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying even rolls, even folds, and squared corners. Everything has to be square and even. If it's not, it won't give us an even rise in the oven. So that's why it's so important to do even rolls, even folds, and square corners. It's also very important to remember that you're always giving a rest between your rolls and folds for your dough, because the gluten strands are going to tighten every single time you roll it and every time you fold it. So you want to give it a little bit of a rest. And if it's uneven and even rolls and folds, you have that uneven rise. So this is a nice picture of what that looks like. Definitely do not want to have that uneven rise. So then when we go into pâte à choux, when we're talking about pâte à choux, I want y'all to see, this is what pâte à choux looks like when it's done. And when they're in the cream puff form, the pâte à choux actually means like little cabbages or something like that. So they don't look super smooth. They aren't perfect for these cream puffs, but the inside is nice and hollow. And as you can see, there's a really nice caramelization that's going on there. So you want to make sure that you get that caramelization. And then, of course, I show you some fun different applications for your cream puffs. You have the swan, and you can do it for savory applications there. And then, of course, your traditional croquembouche, which is made out of cream puffs. And it just goes on and on. Some ideas for plated desserts. Again, this is just your PowerPoint slide that's on Canvas, so it keeps me on track throughout lecture as well. And this is what I'm talking about when we're talking about how pat a choux is made. You're boiling your butter and your liquid ingredients. It can be butter and water. It could be just butter and water. It could be just butter and milk. It depends on your final mouthfeel that you're going for. After that comes to a boil, you're going to take all of your dry ingredients. You're going to dump it on top of that water. You're going to stir it for full hydration, and then you're going to continue stirring with the heat on until a fond forms at the bottom of your pot and your paste comes together all nice and smooth. Then you're going to dump it out, stick it into your mixing bowl, allow for the steam to come up and out, and allow for the paste to cool down a little bit, and then you're going to add in your eggs. Depending on how long you were on your heat and how much steam actually came in the first part of the process and how much steam comes out in the second part of the process is going to determine how many eggs you want to be going into it in the end. And so then they're testing for consistency, and the consistency you want is kind of like a nasty snot where it's going to stretch between your fingers, as you can see in that middle picture right there. And then my boyfriend to the end, he is piping out. He's not really my boyfriend, but if you know who that is, you'll understand why I say he is. But anyway, he's piping out some really lovely puffs, but I don't really believe that that is his work, because I don't believe that he would have inconsistent sizes across his sheet pan, because you want to make sure that all of the spacing and sizing when you're piping your pat a choux is nice and smooth and even across your board. You don't want, across your pan. You don't want to have really large ones and then really small ones. Why? Because of uneven baking times. I know you said that. So let's go into some similarities between puff pastry and pat a choux. Pat a choux is not puff pastry. Puff pastry is not pat a choux. Puff pastry is laminated. Pat a choux is not. Puff pastry is laminated, and because of that lamination, it is leavened solely through that lamination by steam. Pat a choux is also leavened solely by steam. Okay? Now let's talk quickly. Actually, that's the end of day 5. So I'm going to stop this video, and I'm going to make day 6 lecture video so that y'all can have a little break between these 2 lectures. So I will see you in a second.